Welcome to A Pound of Flesh, a Flesh and Blood podcast. On this podcast, we take 16 minutes to discuss one question in depth. My name is Scowling, and my guest today is Zach, aka Aggroblaze96. Aggroblaze, or Zach, you may know him as either one of those names, is probably the biggest Flesh and Blood streamer right now, and recently got recognized for the great content he makes by LSS by getting one of the 5 creator grants that they created for the first time this year. He has been steadily improving his Flesh and Blood skills, which you can see if you've been watching his streams, accumulating in him qualifying for the Pro Tour London. Not only did he qualify, but he also just bubbled out in his win in for top 8. So that's been a great effort getting them for first time and then almost making top 8. You can find Aggroblaze easily if you search for his name. He streams a lot of times of the week, creates content almost every single other day of the week. So there's tons of stuff out there, which I definitely recommend you go watch. With all that being said, Aggro, how are you doing today?
Dude, thanks so much for having me, man. What an intro, dude. You've set the bar really high for like other like things that I'm on. I'm gonna be like, listen, you need to go watch Simon's podcast episode with me because he set the bar really high here. No, I'm good, man. Just getting over in cold, so I'm glad to be kicking that down the road. And ready to keep playing. Worlds is coming up, so been very very busy.
I'm thankful that you took the time to be here today. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. What is your one tip for everyone wanting to get better at Flesh and Blood?
My biggest tip for getting better at Flesh and Blood is note taking. Like when you're starting to get serious about like trying to improve, you're looking to find holes in your game, like, flaws that you have. Note taking is the biggest thing that has helped me get to that next level because I'm able to go back, I'm able to like read and be like, oh, well, I did this here, or I could have done this here. And then over time, you start to pull those mistakes together and everything just kind of like meshes together and you start seeing more wins.
When you're thinking about note taking, do you think there are good and bad notes? So what, or maybe let me rephrase that in a better way. What is good note taking for you? What kind of things would you note down?
Yeah, so I feel like a good note would be after each game, you should stop and you should take a second and you should be like, what went wrong this game? And not like, your note shouldn't be like, oh, like I played Spinal Crush 3 times in a row. Like that is good to note because that is a pretty good thing to do. But you should look deeper at the match. Be like, what nuance happened? Did I block in a weird spot? Was I patient with a sink below, like for a defense reaction? Like really take a moment and look. Because there are some games where you just get high rolled, and that's just how the game goes sometimes. Like it's a card game, but most times with Flesh and Blood, it is such a game of skill, in my opinion, that there is a window, there was a spot where you could have done something better. And I always urge
Mhm.
people to not let their emotions take over when they're writing down notes, that they should like really look for the moment where they did something really good or they did something really bad that cost them even a half a point here or there.
How do you then make sure that you use those notes in a way that brings you forward?
Okay. So if you take notes, so like let's say you've been playing at armories, which are, just like local events, and you're like, you're just kind of getting into the game and you're like, you know what? I'd like to give it my best at a pro quest this weekend. I'm gonna take my deck, I'm gonna see what happens. There are some tools out there like the Codex Journal that are great to like help you like take some refined notes. But you can go to your local drugstore or Walmart and get just like a little notepad, and you can write down, did I go first or second? Did I win or lose? What
Mhm.
hero did I play against? What kind of happened and what like brought that together? But it's important that after the event, not even that same day. So like if I go to a ProQuest on Saturday, Monday night after my stream, I sit down and I look at all my notes from that ProQuest
Yeah.
because I've given it enough time for like, the bad beats or, the joys, the highs of winning matches has worn off. And I feel like I can objectively look at it and say, this is what I could have done better. Like all of my emotions have
Mhm.
left, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when you look at those notes, then do you distill them in a few specific points that maybe you take some more notes, so noteception, right? So that you can then take forward. Is that something that you do to just distill it down to what's really important from that event?
Yeah, 100%. So if you went to a pro quest and you found four big issues with some of your gameplay and it's things that you need to work on, trying to work on four big issues while you're testing games on Talshar can be a lot. It can be overwhelming to try to solve the entire puzzle at one time. So one thing that I
Yes.
like to do is I like to say, okay, this was the biggest issue, or this one thing was the thing that stood out the most to me. So when I play games on Talishar or at my next armory, when I'm practicing, however practice looks for you, I
Yeah.
aim to try and target that one thing. And then the other things are supplemental. And if, like, my mind, I'm not overwhelmed, I'm not feeling like uncomfortable, that's when I'm like, okay, well, like, let's start to focus on this as well. And I try to do it one step at a time, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to everything in life, they try to run before they're walking.
Yeah.
And I think that if you want to win at a high level at a game like Flesh and Blood, you need to really cover all your bases and do things through the right process.
Taking a step slightly back, Talishar, for all those who don't know, is a free online platform. It's a digital client, which is not official, where you can practice Flesh and Blood. It's not a great substitute for the game. The game is much better played in person. I think that's also where you learn better lessons, because Talishar does tend to take away some of the upkeep of the game, which makes it faster and easier to play. But then in turn, you may forget that when you play in person. So you actually got to adjust how you play. But just for some of you who may not know what Talishar, that's what it is. And it is being used for specifically testing. Just to follow up on what you said, then, do you have a example of where notes that you took at an event, then you memorized for a future event and you were specifically able to deploy to improve your game?
Sure, absolutely. So you mentioned Pro Tour London. I lost my winning into top eight. The final match of like our Swiss rounds. It was round 15, and I played against a Prism when I was playing Aurora, and I actually sideboarded incorrectly. Is what cost me the game. I had not had enough high level Prism practice to understand the best way to like play against the hero. And in my head, the plan that I had coming into the event was great. It was solid, but I was wrong. And that's okay. That happens sometimes. But if I had brought in a different equipment piece, I would have been in a much better spot, because I would have had the ability to play around a card called Arclight Sentinel. For anybody who does not know, Arclight Sentinel requires you to attack it, and it also takes away your action point. So unless you have a way to gain extra action points, you can't do anything else that turn. Just for everybody who's new to the game, it was just like I thought I understood how to beat the deck, and I didn't, and I sideboarded incorrectly, and that cost me what could have been one of the coolest days of my life, being able to top eight my first pro tour. That would be an awesome thing to talk about. So
Well, you got pretty close. I'm sure. Sure, next time you'll get it. So one of the things that may be unique to what you and I do, which is play Flesh and Blood online on Talishar for an audience, just in that specific situation, do you take notes as well, and or do you feel like you don't really get around to doing that?
No, so that's a great question. I take notes every time I play on Talishar, whether I'm streaming or whether I'm just playing games like in my room by myself. I actually have a like Google spreadsheet, just because like Google Gmail's free to everybody. So I have a Google spreadsheet that I've set up, and I put the date that I played the game that I'm playing, the hero that I played against, whether I went first or second, whether I won or lost. And then I have a pretty significantly long column for any notes that I have about the game,
Mhm.
and things that I feel like went right or wrong for me. So I try to be as detailed with note taking as I can,
Yeah.
just because it helps me to go back and to be able to like look over that and find flaws in my game.
So when you take those notes, sometimes you may identify what went wrong, or you note down a mistake or something where you weren't clear. How do you go about from that note in a situation it's like, I know something went wrong here, but I don't know what went wrong? How do you take that then one step further to addressing what you noted down as maybe being an issue?
So this is where I feel like being a streamer actually greatly benefits me because I
Hmm.
record almost every single game that I play on Talishar. Now, you don't have to put out content or be a streamer to do this. You know, anybody can download OBS Studios and just screen record their game. But when I don't know or I can't find like in my head quickly like what I feel like went wrong or what happened, I put a note in my section and I put game felt off, review later. And so I take my note taking and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go back and watch this. And so I wait a day or two, like kind of we talked about earlier, to let the feelings wear off. And then I
Hmm.
look for what might have just been right or what might have been wrong, why I won or lost. And so it gives me a chance to like physically review the game to get like a more in depth analysis of what happened.
Hmm. I'm finding out right now why you're getting better at the game and I am not. That's all the things that I should be doing, that I'm currently not doing. But just talking to you about this is motivating me a lot right now to really go back to this because I think note taking they take some discipline as well because I start doing this and I have the thought and the drive to do it, and then it just kinda stops happening
Hmm.
because life or just generally I'm lazy. Uh, just to be completely honest, but I do think it's one of those things that the more you do it and the more consistent that you are with it, the more effect it's going to have.
I started taking notes when I was streaming. I started doing it with my chat. I would be like, guys, like, what do you think went wrong? What do you think I did wrong that game? And I would take notes from chat. And then that turned into me doing it at armories. And then it turned into me doing it at ProQuests and callings. And like, I've just kind of, like you said, I've built that, while I was live and just kind of pushed that into every aspect of my game.
Okay. Yeah, fair. I'll take note of it to start doing it as well. No, I think it's a fantastic tip, and I do think you're very right. This is something that can make a significant difference. Now, we're talking about note taking. Is there something that you would say you do to make those notes good quality? So obviously you talked about making sure you don't let the emotion bleed into it. But is there
Mhm.
something that you always try to do in your notes so you can better use them when you look at them later on?
Absolutely, 100%. So I gave the example earlier of, I attacked with 3 copies of Spinal Crush, which is, one of the
Yeah.
Guardian class best cards. It's very easy to be like, oh, Spinal Crush won me this game. But what I like to do is like when I'm identifying notes, I like to identify a card. So a card that maybe doesn't always stand out, but it's like, did this card get extra value here? Did this force my opponent to block with 2 cards instead of one? Like, was there like some just like, like things that don't jump out at you is super obvious. Finding the cards that have good or bad impact on the game can be very, very good. So a great example would be Victor. I play Victor a
Hmm.
lot, and you have to balance the clash ratio so that you have attack power on top of your deck, so that you're winning and creating golds and drawing cards and all those cool things. And I was playing Sink Belows in my deck for a while, which does not
Yeah.
have an attack value for anybody that doesn't know. And it was causing me to lose clashes. And so I looked back after like 20 games and I had like 7 games on there where I was like, sink
Hmm.
below caused me to lose this clash. And so I had to start reevaluating how I was building my deck, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to elaborate on that as well, so Clash Mechanic is basically a card can trigger an effect where both players unveil the top card of their deck, and the player with the higher value gets a positive effect of that happening. And it's very crucial to Victor's game plan that those clashes go in Victor's favor because it's often the deciding factor if Victor wins or not. Like Victor has that to go his way. So if you play a defense reaction like a Sink Below or a Fate Foreseen that doesn't support that game plan, it blocks for 4, which is great, but it doesn't support the game plan, so it doesn't necessarily support what you want to do, even if it's on the face of it a really good card.
Hmm.
Well, we're fast approaching out of time. We're almost up to it. Before we wrap it up, Anything else you wanted to mention? Any shout outs or just mention what's next for you? Where can people find you? Where are you going? Anything you wanted to say at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm live 3 or 4 days a week, and I've got videos coming out the rest of the days of the week. Aggroblaze96, you can find me there on Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch, pretty much anywhere that I have content. That's where you can find me. And the next big event I'll be at, I'll actually be at Worlds in Philadelphia for 2025. I'm very excited. This is my first Worlds that I played in, so I'm hoping to recreate some of that London magic in Philly this time around.
I'll be definitely looking for your name on the standings every single day and tracking closely what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you a great rest of your day and weekend, and of course, a lot of success in your Flesh and Blood over the next upcoming days and at Worlds, of course.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.